Oops, I've been doing a few bits off camera. Sorry about that, but it was just stuff that I just wanted to get on with. So the engine block's all painted now, front and back, looking absolutely fan-dabby-dozy. These pipes I think I've already talked about, so I just cleaned that off, and it's had a few layers of clear lacquer on it just to keep it looking nice. It won't go rusty. The wok, I've sprayed the wok. I'll talk a little bit more about the wok. So first thing, people always say that manuals are better than autos, but I'll tell you what, when it comes to woks, you cannot beat the wok on an automatic. I mean, that is beautiful, isn't it? And the great thing about the wok on an automatic is made for healthy eating. So it's got this grid on the bottom, so when you're doing your stir fry, you're not collecting a load of oil in the bottom. So yeah, if you want a decent wok, get an auto wok. There is one thing I will mention though, it's looking too shiny. Now, you might say, well, that's not a problem. It is, because I bought 3 cans of Hammerite satin black. It says satin black. That is not satin black. Satin black doesn't have metal flakes in it like that. So I bought 3 cans of that off eBay. It was a little bit cheaper than normal, obviously, because it's got the wrong flipping label on, but it didn't say that on the listing. So I am a bit of a tight arse, me. I'm not just gonna get more satin black. I'll use that. And the only downside is I wanted to keep the engine and that. I want it keeping it looking as original as possible. It's not meant to be a show car or anything. When it's done, I just want it to look like a low mileage car that's been freshened up a little bit. So this is a little bit too shiny for me. And I'm sure when I take it to a show, some dork will come up and they'll look under the bonnet and they'll go,
that wok's too shiny.
Do you know what, mate? I really don't give a f***. Moving on. A subscriber contacted me, was asking about the engine mount on this side, which is the offside. Very, very difficult to get these bolts out when it's in the car, when you're lifting the engine out. One of the reasons for that is as this engine mount rubber wears, it compresses a little bit. So the gap between the wok and the back of the bolt becomes less and less and less. And certainly this is a new engine mount and the gap's much, much bigger. I can quite easily get that bolt in and out of there. But on the one on the car that was compressed, I couldn't. I could only get it up about that far. And I did remember thinking to myself, how are you meant to get that out? And in the end, I think what I did was took the weight off the engine with a crane. And because the rubber was just worn, it just separated. And I managed to get the bolts out okay. But it's really tricky. But yeah, if you've got a worn out engine mount, which is probably why you're going to be replacing it, that is quite tricky to do. So my tip is take the weight off the engine. That'll buy you another maybe 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch space down here to be able to get to the back of them, but it's not easy. So I must shout out Classic Mini Workshop's fastest commenter. He holds the record for this year quite comfortably. Paul Robinson. He will always say to me about replacing parts unnecessarily. So Paul, I think I can justify this one. It's not completely split, but it's worth doing because it was going to go. The one at the other end ain't too bad. It just doesn't look that great. But I'll tell you what's scary. Manual engine mounts, that's the same as a manual engine mount, I think, which is the one on the radiator end. 8 or 9 quid. Automatic engine mount on this end, 45 quid. So, yeah, it's kind of ready to go back in the car. So let's get it down off the bench. I'm going to put it in without the head on, just because it's a little bit lighter, a little bit easier to manoeuvre. Gives me a little bit more space down the back here when I'm trying to get the pot joints in. Yes, I'm not sure whether that's going to be this video or next video. So if we're about 15 to 20 minutes into this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Hope you enjoyed today's video. See you in the next episode where we'll be fitting this engine in. If we're not 15 minutes into this video, then let's get this engine fitted. My first tip for putting an engine in if it's going to be a bit tight, is don't make it difficult for yourself. So don't bolt on things like the alternator, the radiator, leave the ancillaries off like the starter motor and things like that. You can make it a lot easier for yourself. It makes the engine lighter and easier to handle putting into the car, and there's less chance of damaging things. Obviously on a manual it's a lot easier. This is an automatic. The gearbox is quite a bit bigger at the bottom, and all up it's a heavier engine, or a heavier unit. So I've left the head off and I've left a lot of the ancillaries off. I've put the fuel pump on just because it's down the back. It's not really going to get in the way. First thing we got to do, let me just show you under the bonnet, and then the first sort of steps we're going to do. So under the bonnet it's all looking good. I just need to get these cables out of the way, make sure they're not interfering when I'm putting the engine in, but that's ready to go in now. I've put the battery cable in, clamped it in place and clipped it and where it needs to be. I need to take the wheels off, take the hubs off top and bottom, and pull the drive shaft back to give me a bit more room to get the gearbox in. So we'll do that first, and then we can get the engine up on the hoist and start lowering it into position. Now what I'm doing here, I'm just gonna take a bit of weight off this brake hose. You don't want that hanging from the brake hose because you damage the brake hose. So we're just gonna use a couple of cable ties and just take some of the weight off. That's better. That drive shaft should be out of the way enough now. Let's go around and do the other side. Well, there we go, it's in. It definitely was a struggle with this engine mount down this side. I think when Mark put Kit's engine in, he got Lucy to help him, but it's certainly very difficult. Hopefully I captured it with the other GoPro, because I know someone was asking me about it. It is a real pain to do, and even now really I can't tell you there is the best way of doing it. It's just really fiddly. But yeah, so that's the engine in. We've got the engine mounts bolted up, the drivetrain is all in, the pot joints are back in, and the metal clips are all done up. So yeah, we're getting there. I think we're going to get the head on next. We'll clean up that face, get the head on, so that's, I ain't got to worry about any dirt or rubbish going down into there. And then it's yeah, continue with the rebuild.